What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
Aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Monday, October 12th, 2020, start of a brand new week here. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. There's a lot of news and the talking points that we need to get through before we can start taking phone calls. Ken is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phones ultimately when we do open them up for your comments. Mike is there. I'm sorry. I was told Ken was there. It's Mike. So Mike is in our control room. And anyway, before we get into the news here, a little bit of good news. We found out just before we went to airtime, Claire and I got back the results of our COVID-19 tests. They're negative. So we do not have COVID-19. We haven't contaminated all of our friends and families and loved ones. If it seems like I'm in an unusually cheerful mood, that's the reason for it. Okay, today is Columbus Day. It's a holiday for a lot of places, a lot of businesses here, and also for a lot of protests. Portland rioters topple Abe Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt statues in a day of rage against Columbus Day. Now, there's a lot of people who are out there saying that it may be time for Columbus Day to go away and to stop revering him so much because of what the European contact with North America and eventually South America did to the indigenous peoples. And there was a lot of really bad stuff that happened there. I'm in agreement that we ought to stop revering Christopher Columbus, not because of what his intrusion into this hemisphere did, but because he wasn't the first to discover the North American continent. I mean, if you really think about it, those humans who walked across that land bridge from Siberia to Alaska 20,000 years ago, they're the first ones to actually discover this land. Then you have the Vikings, who were now recognized as having been to the eastern part of Canada long before Christopher Columbus did what he did. And the Vikings told the Arabs that there was a landmass on the other side of the ocean, and the Arabs told the Templars, and Christopher Columbus's wife came from a Templar family, and it may be through her that he knew there was a huge landmass over on the other side of the ocean. And it's worth keeping in mind that Christopher Columbus himself never actually set foot on the North American continent. All of his voyages were to those islands in the Caribbean that were projecting a little bit further out into the Atlantic than the American mainland. So, Columbus, great that he had the nerve to do it. He got screwed over by the royalty, which is why this land is called America and not Columbia. But still in all, he certainly wasn't the first here. I mean, there's evidence of Templar expeditions over to Newfoundland, primarily through the Sinclair family. So a lot of history. I don't think we know as much about history as we like to imagine that we do. Okay, the big news today, the hearings for the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett began today. And of course, she got to just sit there in her little face mask for hours on end while all the members of the committee got their chance to say something. And of course, the Republicans were all praising her and the Democrats were all attacking her. Now, the Democrats have prudently backed off attacking her for her Catholicism. Not only is a religious test for office expressly forbidden by the Constitution, but it's not playing well in the polls, because people are seeing this not just as an attack on Catholicism, but an attack on all religions as well. And can you imagine what would happen if Amy Coney Barrett was an Orthodox Jew and they tried to bring up the influence her faith would have on her decisions? The corporate media would just rip them apart here. So the Democrats turned today's hearings into a referendum on Obamacare. And they were out there with photos of all these, cute little kids who would have died without Obamacare. And they were really laying the schmaltz on with a trowel to the point where it got just a little bit icky. And I think probably most people saw through the obviousness of it all. But Amy Coney Barrett got her chance to do her introductory remarks. The actual questioning will get underway tomorrow. Interestingly enough, CNN cut away from the live hearings, was the only network not airing Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearings. I was watching them on Fox News, but I was very surprised that CNN would think that there were other things to talk about. You'd never know about it to watch their news coverage here. So, according to Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, Amy Coney Barrett, if she is confirmed to the Supreme Court, which seems likely, she should recuse herself from any cases linked to the outcome of the November 3rd presidential election. And he also said she should recuse herself if there's a challenge to the Obamacare health law. Well, the whole point of having Amy Coney Barrett put on that court was to avoid a 4-4 tie vote, which in the case of the presidential election would throw the election back into the House of Representatives. And in the case of Obamacare, would leave the issue completely unresolved. Now, interestingly enough, back in the 1980s, okay, Joe Biden was testifying about efforts to pack the court. I was talking about President Roosevelt, who had the right to send to the U.S. Senate and the United States Congress a proposal to increase the number of judges on the court, said it was perfectly legal, but Joe Biden himself said it was a terrible, terrible mistake to make. It was a bonehead idea, and yet all of a sudden now they're out there saying, oh yeah, it's time to enlarge the number of justices. We've got to get 15 up there so we can load them up with liberals. Now, the Democrats have dropped the phrase packing the court, and they've got a new term for it. If Biden wins, they're calling it depoliticizing the court, which is a ridiculous comment to make on it because their goal is to remove the conservative majority on the Supreme Court and turn it into a liberal majority on the Supreme Court, which is just as political, but that's the term they want to use because apparently packing the court as a phrase is not polling very well. Now, Chuck Schumer is out there threatening to basically boycott the Senate. Says all the Democrats are going to boycott the Senate, so the Senate will not have the quorum necessary to take up the vote to advance the Barrett nomination. Now, this means that Schumer is suggesting shutting down the entire United States Senate until the end of its term, which is January 20th of 2021. Now, that's desperation on the cusp of madness. But they really don't have any other cards to play. And Barrett's nomination, her confirmation, is a study in foregone conclusions. The Democrats are just going to turn it into a showcase. And again, they're trying to turn it into a referendum on Obamacare. But Obamacare, yes, there were some success stories there. But overall, it was a disaster. Remember, you can keep your doctor if you like your doctor. That turned out to be fake. You can keep your plan if you like your plan. That turned out to be fake. Premiums for health insurance doubled. The deductibles went right through the roof. And the reality is that the vast majority of people were paying much more for health insurance than they did before Obamacare. It was a giveaway to the health insurance industry, which actually had significant input into the authoring of the Affordable Care Act. All righty, story here coming out of American Liberty Report. They're pointing out how this independent probe into the origins of the Russia witch hunt has yielded initial criminal convictions, which haven't happened. The indictments have not come down. But basically, the release of once secret documents coveted by the Obama administration proves CIA Director John Brennan colluded with Hillary Clinton to perpetrate the Russia fraud on the American people as a distraction from the email scandal. So it was all Hillary's idea. Now, Brennan's memo on Clinton's alleged Trump-Russia plan is turning out to be a bombshell. A lot of people are wondering if this is Trump's October surprise. And everybody's saying, okay, where are the indictments? Where are the arrests? And apparently, President Trump has issued Bill Barr an ultimatum during a live phone-in Thursday on Fox Business. Either the Attorney General indicts Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Hillary Clinton for the greatest political crime in the history of our country, or he will find himself in a sad situation. Threats are definitely going on out there. And really, the American people deserve to know what actually transpired. We deserve to have the Durham report before the election. And we're seeing the deep state just in panic mode, trying to keep this information away from you, the American people. But you, the American people, need to remember something important. You're the boss. You own this country. The government works for you. It's like a custodian in a building. The government is the custodian of our national sovereignty. Their job is to get around there, with the brooms and the dustpans and, clean out the toilets and whatnot. And in exchange, we trust them with the keys to our nation. And if we find them going in with the keys to our nation and doing illegal, illicit, immoral things, we have every right to know about it and, more importantly, to fire them. Now, another story that's coming out of uns.com, basically saying that if Biden and Harris win, there will be a crackdown on white people, probably along the lines of what we saw in South Africa and Zimbabwe. And they're looking at these two events. First of all, the fact that the attempt to kidnap the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, has been blamed on white supremacists, even though it turned out that the ringleader was Antifa, that he'd been posting anti-Trump messages. So he's definitely not a Trump supporter. And the second item they talk about is how Twitter suspended Lauren Witzke, who's anti-immigration. She's an American First candidate who's already won the GOP Senate nomination in Delaware. So Bloomberg came on out with this statement that Michigan is a hotbed of nationalist, extremist, and white supremacist hate groups with more than 24 active organizations, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, I don't know about you. Those others are really, tacky no-nos as far as I'm concerned. I don't have a problem with people being nationalists. There is nothing wrong with loving your country and wanting it to be first in the world. I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing. It's certainly the way we were taught when I went to elementary school. You love your country. You want it to be the best in the world. You want to be the greatest in the world at everything. That certainly fueled the race to the moon when we had to beat those gosh darn Soviets to the lunar surface. So I don't see anything wrong with being nationalist. And I consider myself a nationalist. As much as I have problems with our current politicians, I want the United States of America to prevail and succeed and regain its greatness, as Trump has been trying to do here. Now, speaking of Trump, there are more bits of dirt coming on out from the so-called debate commission. And apparently there's an individual named Hernandez who has now been tied to the Transition Integrity Project funded by George Soros. And apparently she's also tied to the Chinese Communist Party-linked Berggruen Institute. Now, the highly partisan Transition Integrity Project was first exposed by the National Pulse in early August after repeatedly making the false claim of nonpartisanship unchallenged by the corporate media. All righty. Getting into the area of whether we have honest elections. And by the way, polls are showing the majority of Americans do not think our election system is honest, transparent, or verifiable. So the Public Interest Legal Foundation produced and released a video documenting visits to non-residential addresses claimed by registered voters in southern Nevada. Now, Nevada's voter registration form requires prospective registrants to list addresses of their actual residents. The foundation performed site visits and discovered they were commercial addresses, storefronts, factories, things like that. Very obvious signs of massive election fraud. There's so much election fraud. In my mind, it doesn't matter who wins in November. The election has already lost credibility. I don't even care if Trump wins. Okay, this election is a joke, and our election system is the laughingstock of the rest of the world. Okay, now Joe Biden and Kamala Harris decided to have a joint rally in Phoenix, Arizona, and apparently nobody really showed up except for Biden-Harris staffers. And the local news was mystified. They were outside the venue, and the street was empty. No signs, no lines, no protests, nothing. It was just completely empty there. And the talking head on the video was saying that maybe the event wasn't as well publicized as it could have been, but they were filling up the venue with people who work for the Biden-Harris campaign. I guess they don't want to take a chance of like an independent thinker getting in there. All right, getting on over to the riots and protests and all that other stuff that's going on around here. Luxury shops in Soho initially threw their support, including money, behind the Black Lives Matter movement when it was trendy earlier this year. Well, now they're sort of getting their comeuppance because they're being looted for hundreds of thousands of dollars in merchandise. And if they try and stop the looting, they're being accused of racism. And this is not trivial. In one particular instance, the NYPD had over the summer sought looters responsible for stealing $1,500,000 in merchandise from the Celine clothing store. And let's see. Oh, that's something else. Okay. So we're seeing this trend all over luxury New York stores where the security is reluctant to interfere with the looting because they don't want to be accused of being racists. Now, I think this has really gone way too far. If you're looting, you're looting. No matter what color you are or what your political affiliation is or what organizations you belong to, looting is wrong. Looting is stealing. You're taking things without paying for them. And security should be intervening. But it really is ridiculous out there. All right, down in Denver, we're getting more details about the shooting at the Denver Civic Center on Saturday. There was a Patriot Prayer demonstrator who was shot and killed by Matthew Doloff, who was supposedly working as a security guard for one of the TV news crews. It has now come on out he wasn't licensed to work as a security guard in Colorado. Over in Portland, police are taking a more aggressive stance with protesters, arresting many who were marching towards a precinct over an inside tip. The gathering was a direct action event, meaning they were going to attack the precinct. Now, as you know, over this last weekend, we had the hurricane, then tropical storm Delta, make landfall down in New Orleans. Those poor people after dealing with Laura. The remnants of it are now arriving here in Indiana, and we're expecting wind and rain and cold temperatures a little bit later in the day, about the time the show ends here. But drone footage has captured the devastation caused by these two hurricanes, Delta and Laurel. 370,000 are without power. Delta has claimed 2 lives. And according to Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards, apparently an 86-year-old man from St. Martin Parish died while refueling his power generator, and it burst into flames. And apparently the man had not allowed the generator to fully cool before refueling. Those generators are dangerous. Don't use them indoors. Carbon monoxide. If they run out of fuel, you have to let them cool before you refuel them. Dakota Pierce was a 19-year-old Illinois tourist in Florida. He got caught in a rip current by the powerful waves created by Delta. And I heard a commentator talking about the video saying that you really can't tell the damage between Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Delta. And it really, really is a mess. Now, out in California, fire investigators looking into what caused the Zog fire have seized equipment from Pacific Gas and Electric. And apparently the concern now is, because this has happened before, that the fire may have been sparked by malfunctioning power line equipment. So much for everybody who was out there screaming that this was global warming. So PG&E said in a filing Friday with the Public Utilities Commission that investigators with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection seized some of its electrical equipment near where the Zog fire started back on September 27th. Okay, let's talk about COVID-19. Like I said, Claire and I are delighted we're negative, so we can go back to our normal life of wearing gloves and face masks to go down to the supermarket. All righty, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these few words with more about COVID-19. Welcome back to our show here. And again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network is in the middle of a perpetual fundraiser. We do not have large corporations or conservative billionaires pouring heaps of money all over us to keep us going. We rely on you, the listeners, and your generosity to keep doing what we're doing as long as it needs to be done. And right now, of course, the need has never been greater as we head on into a contentious election here. So one more time, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Okay, getting on back to COVID-19. Apparently, there's a CDC study out that said 85% of COVID-19 cases last July were people who often or always wore the masks. So it's more indications that the masks aren't really working. And we've seen other people coming on out and saying that, if it's not a medical grade mask, it's really useless. So all these homemade masks we see in the supermarkets hanging on the racks and everything. I mean, if you hold it up to the light and you can see through it, it's not going to work for you. Now, over in London, they're facing a tier 2 lockdown. Boris Johnson is expected to bring in tighter curbs on the capital's residents with a ban on meeting others indoors, but pubs, restaurants, and gyms stay open as long as you're not with friends, which strikes me as kind of interesting here. All righty, the U.S. could have hundreds of thousands of doses of Regeneron's antibody cocktail ready for this fall. They're scrambling for emergency FDA approval amid surging demand after Trump called the drug a cure. Now, interestingly enough, in this article from Scoopy Web, they're saying that Trump's calling the drug a cure is false. No, we don't really know, do we? Remdesivir shortens recovery time from COVID-19 by 5 days and reduces the risk of death by 30%. Final results from the National Institute of Health study show. And apparently researchers compared hospitalized patients who received remdesivir to those who were given a placebo. And apparently patients given the drug recovered within a median of 10 days compared to 15 days who received the placebo. If I were one of the patients who received a placebo, I would be very upset. Don't placebo me for the basis of your study. Give me what you think might work here. Now, amazingly enough, the World Health Organization has flip-flopped on the idea on lockdowns, and now they're backing off and saying maybe it isn't such a good idea. Yes, it slows the rate of spread of coronavirus, but it can't stop it. And even when they first started to talk about lockdowns and masks and everything, they never said it was going to prevent you from getting the disease. They just wanted to slow the surge so it didn't overwhelm the medical system, which it never did. We had all these hospitals that were set up for COVID-19 patients that for the most part sat empty. Remember when they sent the 2 hospital ships to New York and Los Angeles, and they only had a few patients each year? So not as serious as a lot of people were saying here. And again, getting back to Claire and I, we were obviously pleasantly surprised by our negative COVID-19 tests, but we were surprised because the person that we were exposed to did have symptoms, did test positive, and during a physical therapy session had made a lot of skin-to-skin contact with Claire. Well, the fact that we didn't get it tells us that it's not quite as contagious, at least skin on skin, as people might have thought, because we were convinced there was no that we could not have caught it from this individual here. All right, let's turn to the international news here. Over in Nagorno-Karabakh, the ceasefire is pretty much falling apart. There's been heavy overnight shelling, and Russia worked really hard trying to bring both sides together for a humanitarian ceasefire. Pulling them apart was a lot simpler. And by yesterday, the ceasefire was in tatters with heavy overnight shelling in civilian populated areas. And it's not clear that much was even finished by the time the ceasefire had collapsed, with Azerbaijan the first to confirm airstrikes being ordered against ethnic Armenian forces. In exchange, Armenian forces were accused of shelling ganja, hitting an apartment building. Okay, live updates. Apparently, Karabakh forces claim they've destroyed Azerbaijan's Sukhoi 25. This is coming from the Armenian Ministry of Defense. Azerbaijan is denying the report, saying that their Sukhoi is still in great shape. Meanwhile, the Azerbaijan military has destroyed Armenian S-300s. Means they weren't very good at protecting themselves, let alone anything else. Okay, we are coming up on another commercial break here, and when we come on back, more news about the international front. A lot more stuff we got to take care of. Thank you. And welcome back to our show here. We're going to take another phone call from Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today? Layla, are you there? Okay, I cannot hear Layla. Going once.
Sorry, I had the mute button on.
Oh, okay, there you are.
Yeah.
I was going to put your face on a milk carton.
My apologies. Yeah, I was going to start with Afghanistan, but I have to say something about this constantly attacking capitalism as though an ideology is itself responsible for any ills that other people suffer, and to call capitalism predatory. Does that mean that when a person is poor and he steals, he's not being a predator? I mean, it's absurd. Capitalism is what basically made the U.S. as strong as it is, or was. Mm-hmm. And it also provides the incentive for the entrepreneurial spirit that is essential for what made America such an admirable nation and basically a blueprint for other countries to emulate. But back to my initial topic, Afghanistan. Why do we always refer to it as a war when it was simply an invasion? It was not a war of equals, even remotely equal. It was quite simply an unprovoked invasion, as were so many other things. And what preceded all the chaos in the Middle East, where there were masses of people stampeding to get away, to escape, refugees, we call them? Yes. It was, remember the Arab Spring?
Yes.
That supposedly went all over before the leaders of, or the so-called tyrants of each of those countries was removed. I'm wondering now if anybody has noticed any similarities, and well, not exactly similarities, but the same underlying force. Are we having an American spring? We've got chaos in the U.S.
Yes.
We've got chaos in Canada. It's basic, and it certainly has occurred in the past in South America. Now, one thing that Peter said, I always enjoy his calls because he has so much information that he imparts. What we have to look at is Zionism. Well, it's not even Zionism so much. That's just a label they put on it. They borrowed it from Judaism.
Yes.
Those who subsumed the Judaic philosophy or ideology as a cover for what they're doing, and they're blaming it on Jews as a massive group of people around the world. You know, Jews have been sucked into the notion that they're part of some global spiritual ideology. It's not that at all. They're basically dupes. They've been brought into Judaism. A lot of them, if you look at Russia, they were called Subotniks or Shapostnikis. That was where Russian Christians converted to Judaism. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones who have flooded to Israel. But Israel is basically just headquarters for the global takeover that's been going on. And
okay, Layla, I got to put you on hold. Okay. We got to take a break for station identification. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words. And welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're speaking with Layla in Canada. Layla, just pick up where you left off, please.
Yeah, Mike, I want to continue with the concept of perhaps unwisely blaming Israel. It's just a collection of people, because even the people within Israel are themselves victims, whether or not they're aware of it, of indoctrination.
Mhm.
For example, go to a website, NKUSA, N as in November, K as in Kilo, USA.org. You will see that a lot of truly religious Jews oppose the illegal way or the immoral way, they believe, of the way Israel was established. But anyway,
Yes.
let's go back to even before Israel as a global superpower that has insinuated itself into every kind of institution, Facebook, Google, CIA, FBI, whatever you want to call it, the UN. They've had their tentacles there all along, whether we go back to Germany, Russia, everywhere that there has been enormous fields of chaos, you will always find that same group of people who call themselves Jews, who identify as Jews, but they are simply a form of vampirism on humanity. But let's look at the British Empire. Look how they sucked the life out of the world, the wealth out of everywhere. India, there's a reason the British family, the royal family, is so wealthy. They sucked everything out of the rest of the world. Even when Spain was robbing Central America, the Incas and the Aztecs and the Mayans, of their gold, the British pirates, with permission of Queen Elizabeth I, were robbing, were pirating.
That made them privateers.
They were called privateers. They were pirates, and they were thugs. They weren't even. They were given titles, but before that, they were just petty peasants from the outskirts. It's kind of tragic that we don't recognize that there's an underlying thread within humanity where an elite rises to the top. They give themselves an identity, or their group an identity, or numerous identities, so you can't pin them down. It's always like a moving target. So we have to stop focusing on Israel or Zionism or any of the isms. There's something about humanity that seems to be obsessed with acquisitiveness, and we allow elites to take over. And we should not be supporting things like Facebook, Google, Twitter, LinkedIn, or all of those organizations, because we are basically handing them what our thoughts are. I've never joined any of those social media groups because it was so patently obvious from the beginning that they were basically asking us to just feed them information that they could record.
Yes.
The time and COVID, of course, now makes it even more difficult for us to communicate with one another. So we rush even more to, when I say we, I have to exclude myself from that because I have never engaged in the social media. But it's really my big fear is for the fact that the U.S. maybe is disintegrating. And it's got to be stopped before it actually happens. Is it possible?
I don't think it can be stopped. I don't think it can be stopped. I've been prognosticating a Soviet Union-style collapse of this country for some time, and looking at the circus that our election system has become, I don't think it's too far off.
Well, the problem is, of course, that maybe we should long ago have realized that huge nations, when they take on such diverse groups of people, whether it's ethnicities or political ideologies or religious groups, you cannot call yourself, a nation has to be homogeneous, or at least largely homogeneous and cooperative, and have the interests of the nation at heart. For that to happen, you have to have a sense of homogeneous cohesion. It doesn't have to be 100%, but it's got to be largely that. We now are too divided. I'm talking about all of North America.
Yes.
We're all too divided into our own little forts, our own little, and we're not seeing we can't consider the fact that the nation comes first. We have too many new immigrants who don't identify with the ideology, the wonderful idealisms that created the North American freedoms and democracies that we have now lost. And one final point.
Yes.
For people who don't know it, Gloria Steinem, remember the days of Gloria Steinem and Ms. Magazine? Do you know she was financed by the CIA?
Yes, I did know that.
By destroying a woman remember motherhood, apple pie, and the flag? You start by destroying motherhood, and then the apple pie vanishes, and then you've got the flag being destroyed. The whole concept of nationhood is lost. So when I talk about the American spring, I think we're in the midst of it. And if it can be stopped, it's up to the people. It's up to the people to take back whatever remains. Or maybe it is time to break down into regional groups where those same ideals can be retained and ride over the minor subterranean groups that are bringing down the foundations, the underpinning of this country. Because at the pinnacle, at the very top, the elite is not part of this, quote, nation. They are offshore. Anyway, I'm sorry, I've just gone way too long, and forgive my emotions, but it's just so frustrating to see us being distracted with talk about COVID, which is just a tool to distract us, just like we've been divided into segments like Facebook, Twitter, group, whatever, LinkedIn, whatever silly group, and you can't even sign into anything anymore unless you sign in through Facebook or Google. I just don't go there. I simply close my browser when it says sign in with something. Hell no. I know I'm already being spied on. I don't care, but I'm not going to help you spy on me by walking right into the bait. So anyway, by the way, Saudi Arabia now is calling the Palestinians every possible derogatory name the Israelis used to use. The Saudis, amongst Arab peoples, were always believed to have been part of the origin, that they never actually converted from Judaism. So that is what has brought the elite of Saudi Arabia, the elite that is controlling Israel, and all of those. It's a class thing, and I never thought I'd be saying that. Marx pinned it down right, but it is. You get an elite, you can call them corporations, whatever you want to call them, but they control banking, they control everything, and they've insinuated themselves into every possible method of that controls, and that includes communications. Anyway, I've already said way too much. Thank you for tolerating my long tirade. Thank you, Mike. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Robbie in Florida. Robbie, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey there, Mike. I got some good news.
Good.
We got this. People are going to the stores now without masks here in Florida, and I think they contribute a lot of it to this sheriff over here in this other county, Polk County. His name's Grady Judd. He says, I'm not wearing masks, I'm not enforcing it. Well, you go over to Lakeland, I'm going into everywhere now. People aren't wearing them. Even older people aren't wearing them. And that's good, because there's no going back. You get these older folks in there, they're already going in there no, I'm not doing it. No, you're not. They will be fine. That's a good thing. I don't think they're going to, once the cat's out of the bag, they're not going to put it back in the bag.
No, they're not.
They're fight now, because there was people at the door at first, and saying, "Hey, you got to wear a mask," and people said, "Well, I'm not going to. I don't have to. There's not a law." And finally, a couple of people went to jail, but finally they just are breaking the dam, and it's everywhere now. I'm not even worried about taking when I'm going to auto parts stores. I go into the convenience stores. I'm going into the Publix is a big store here, and they were
there's a couple of stores here in town where the masks are still mandatory. Others have got the sign on the door, but you walk on in and nobody's wearing them.
And that's good. That is good. I'll let you. Well, I want to say one thing about Layla there. I agree with her on the capitalism thing, but what we have here is crony capitalism. So, and I'm not sure that our founding fathers knew that there'd be Jeff Bezos and Zuckerbergs and these oligarchs that come around. So what do? I mean, you don't want to call it socialism, but you got to, these people got too much money. Put back to society. If that's socialism, I hate to use that word, but maybe some things can be tweaked and we can still call it a republic, But I'll let you go, Mike. I'll keep it short. Take it easy, buddy.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Joe in Tennessee. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Well, I'm real disappointed. I was watching that Senate hearing, and it's not a circus, and I wanted a circus. I mean, I enjoyed the Kavanaugh circus. I think it was great for institutional destruction, and I guess the all their political people must have gotten together and said, "Oh, we can't do that again," because the way it disgraced the Senate and backfired on the Democrats. So, but I think I will give the Democrats some credit in that they stick on message as a group, and they use their time for good propaganda purposes. Although they realize they can't attack Barrett, they used their time to attack Trump. They were bringing up COVID all the time. COVID, Trump, COVID. And then the Republicans get on there, and every one of them's like a constitutional scholar. None of them realize that they have an opportunity to speak 5 to 10 minutes to the American people directly without the media spin and tell them all about, like, Russiagate and about how the previous administration tried a coup against the elected president. I mean, I heard basically the same ho-hum speech from every senator. It was about constitutional activist judges, justifying the putting her in, without, waiting for the election. But they could have used all that time to, like, defend the president and to expose the biggest scandal in American history that a lot of Americans aren't even aware of.
But that would have been counterproductive. They would have been accused of hijacking the confirmation process, to make political statements, even though that's what the Democrats did. But the corporate media would have raked them over the coals.
Who cares about that? That's the whole point. You're doing an end run around the corporate media. The corporate media isn't even allowing the information out. If I was a senator, I would be reading text messages from Strzok and Page and Brennan's notes, and I'd say, this is just too important. I want the American people to be aware of this. And this is why it's important to have judges that'll, like, uphold the law, and you can bring it, you can schmooze it in, just like they're saying, in case anything comes up about, medical coverage, in case anything comes up about the attempted coup against the president of the United States, then you just work it in. I mean, that's not that difficult to do. And if the media wants to bring it up, let them. But there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, that guy getting shot there in Denver.
Yes.
If you have time.
Yeah, well, a few minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I talked about this before when that guy got shot in the head in Portland. This is pretty stupid to let yourself get shot in the head, no offense. But you're dealing with very unstable people on the left. And people are losing their lives, very poorly, in that they're not getting anything for it. It's just dumb. It's a dumb way to, like, sacrifice your life to just get involved with arguments with crazy people. And I just wish people on the right would be a little smarter and tactical. I mean, you're going to cities that are run by leftists, that are run by lefties. The police are on the side of Antifa. This guy that shot him, it'll probably turn out he's some kind of FBI agent anyway. He's working for a local news channel as a fake security guard.
Yes.
By the way, his family should sue the hell out of that television station if they hired somebody without documents as a security guard. I mean, there should be a lawsuit there. They're going to own that television station, but I'm sure they're going to figure a way to get out of that. Huh?
I said I could use a job.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just you don't check the guy's credentials. You hire him as a security, and then he shoots a guy in the head at a protest. I mean, I just imagine that the lawyers are drooling. Although, we live in a country now that if you're on the wrong side politically, you won't get justice. And that's the important thing for people to realize out there.
Yes.
If you're going to go and participate in these protests, they're out to get you. You're not on your side. You're gonna find out there is no equal justice in this country, especially if you're on the right. I mean, so I just warn people that there's a time and a place to do things. And you also have to be prepared to face the consequences, because this is the consequences right here. And it's a shame that he went out without taking out 10 of them, or it's a shame that he lost his life without any, like, benefit to the world. And it really is a shame. And it just shows that a lot of these guys don't realize the danger that they're in because of the way the situation is structured. Antifa is protected by the federal government. They're protected by the police. They're protected by the government, the prosecutors, the local governors. You just have to be smarter and tactical about how to go after these people. The protest in like certain protests are just plain old stupid unless you're going to do it in a pro-Trump spot. And even then, you got to be careful.
Yes.
So I just hate to see people wasting their lives like this for nothing. It's just a shame. And, I remember when I protested with 9/11 Truth, we had a guy there and the police showed up. They didn't like us. We were in Orlando, giving out DVDs on the street. And this cop comes over and this guy wouldn't give the cop his driver's license. He's like, oh, it's against the Constitution. I don't have to give you my driver's license. You know what I did? I got the hell out of there. I just got out of there. Because I'm not going to go down because some idiot wants to make a constitutional issue about giving his license to a cop.
Well, that sounds to me like he was an agent provocateur, that he was sent in there to cause a ruckus.
He could have, but I'm just saying he ended up getting arrested. And then I heard the woe is me. Oh, did you hear whatever his name is got arrested? And I said, well, I'm just glad I didn't get arrested for being near his dumb ass. I mean, just give him your driver's license, or if you don't come whining about the fact that you got arrested. You just got to be smart, well, especially when you're on unpopular causes. 9/11 Truth was being on street corners with 9/11 DVDs was not a very popular thing.
No.
They were itching to find ways to get us arrested. You had to be very, very smart. People would come try to stir up trouble for you. Like you said, agent provocateurs, the police would come, and I'd always just try to leave because nothing good comes out of anything with the police when you're doing something like that, They wanted to arrest me in Orlando, and they said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I have to be here. I said, if I wasn't, it would be misprision of treason. I said, treason was committed on 9/11, and I'm obligated to be here. And the cop actually kind of nodded and left me alone because I gave him the right answer. That I'm exposing treason, and if I didn't, I'd be committing a crime.
Yes.
Anyway, but anyway, my point is you got to do these things smart, and it's tough because there's a lot of pitfalls out there for you, a ton of them.
Yes.
These people think, oh, they're just going to go to a parade and support Trump and wave flags, but some of them go thinking, well, we're going to go and confront Antifa. Well, that's fine, but you better be prepared. You better be have your will written, or bring a gun with a high capacity magazine and save the last bullet. Make sure your insurance is paid up. Yeah, because you better save the last bullet for yourself because you're going away forever, and they'll probably get at you in prison. So just think like that because these are the times we're getting in. I'm not saying that the time isn't coming when we're going to have to get out in the street, but I think people are wasting their lives right now. And it's not the time. It's probably a better time to be practicing on a range and getting yourself physically fit. Maybe learning jiu-jitsu or learning how to fight,
yes.
and things like that. But it's not that you can't go on their field they have all the refs and everything like that. It's so in their favor. You have to wait for actually anarchy to attack the anarchist. How's that?
Well,
anyway.
sound wisdom there. Anything else?
No, I learned all that the hard way. So,
okay.
I'm not trying to be like a smart ass about it. I'm just telling you that, going to jail ain't fun. And you're not going to have anybody that's going to be jumping over backwards to bail your ass out, Not if you're politically unpopular. We don't have bail funds for righties,
No, we don't, unfortunately. Anyway, Joe, I got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're discussing the international news. We're discussing Armenia and Azerbaijan. And apparently the president of Azerbaijan is claiming Baku has seized control over several settlements in Karabakh. And they're basically talking about the ceasefire supposedly took effect at noon on Saturday, but was not fully observed over the weekend, especially yesterday here. Now, both Armenia and Azerbaijan are saying we will never leave. They have been fighting over this disputed region for decades. So the animosity goes back a long, long time, multi-generation here, and it's a potential flashpoint. I was hoping the ceasefire was going to hold, but it didn't here. Okay, an arrest warrant has been issued by Russia against the foreign-backed former Belarusian presidential candidate Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, say that 3 times fast, on Russian territory. A source in Russian law enforcement told TASS the arrest warrant had been initially issued in Belarus, but it also extends to Russia due to a bilateral agreement between the two countries. Okay. All righty. Trump is seeking a last-minute deal with Russia regarding nuclear arms, restarting the START treaty here. And he's trying to basically score this before the election because he feels, with some justification, that it's probably going to help his reelection effort. And basically, the U.S. spent most of this year not making serious inroads on a nuclear deal with Russia, but all of a sudden it's ramping up. Trump is reported to be interested in getting one off before the November 3rd election. And officials believe they could possibly wrap it up within a week. All right. Trump is out there saying that all of the U.S. troops currently in Afghanistan should be home by Christmas, which sounds really good to the voters. Sounds really good to the voters. But apparently, the National Security Advisor had said there would still be 2,500 U.S. troops in Afghanistan in early 2021. This is in line with previous observations on the matter. Okay. Now, here's a couple of gray stories, and I'll explain why. There was a story that came out of Your Destination Now. Taliban applauds Trump for promising to bring U.S. troops in Afghanistan home by Christmas and says it will be the start of good and positive relations following 19 years of war. I am not really sure about this one, and I'll tell you why. Did you see the story that came out from CBS where the Taliban was endorsing Donald Trump for the presidency? And the Taliban basically came on out and said, no, we have done no such thing. And CBS was caught lying yet again. And so all of this talk about, the Taliban loves Donald Trump and everything looks to be just more propaganda to harm his image. Okay, we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines now, 800-313-9443. And we're going to start with Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I heard your comment on Christopher Columbus, and I wanted to talk a little bit about history, but I don't know, was it you where I saw the article, the little thing that says that Christopher Columbus should be applauded for bringing diversity to North America?
Yeah, but that's a satire piece.
I know, but it's pretty funny, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Flip it around. And I wanted to say a couple things. There's the way that our popular culture it's framed by TV and the movies.
Yes.
And if it's not on TV, the narrative isn't on TV or the movies. And you know who controls TV and the movies? Everybody out there. It really doesn't happen. I want to ask a question of you, Mike, and I know you're a guy who knows this history.
Yes.
I want you to name one fighter group in World War II. Can you, and more than one if you know any, but one fighter group that fought in World War II? You
mean besides the Red Tails?
Yes. Yeah, I knew you'd name Red Tails because that's the only one anybody knows. Do you know any other ones?
Let's see. There's the, well, I remember a lot of the ones from World War I, like the 94th Aero. I have to admit, no, I don't really specifically off the top of my head know any fighter.
And Mike, you're a history guy. You're a history guy, and I respect.
Well, I'm not. I'm not in war history. What can I tell you?
Well, but I will say there's a bunch of them. The 56, another one that people might know, the Flying Tigers. But yes. The fact of the matter is, the narrative is, if you ask a kid today, who were the greatest fighter pilots in World War II, they're going to say the Red Tails. Doesn't matter what color, they'll say it because that's all they know.
Yes,
it's like on every channel. But just to let you know, they were in combat from 43 to 45.
Yes.
They shot down 111 aerial victories. You know what the top scoring ETO, European Theater of Operations group was, and how many they shot down in the same amount of time with the same airplanes?
No, I'm sure you'll tell us though.
Yeah, the 56, they shot down 550 aerial, more than 5 times what the Red Tails did, and another 500 on the ground, so 1,000 versus 111. And on top of that, there were no aces in the Red Tails. Did you know that? Their
Yes,
top
I knew
guy was
that.
a guy named Lee Archer, 4.5 kills, and they had to rejigger it because they couldn't have a famous Red Tail and not have one ace. In 80 years, there hasn't been one black ace. So even though he only claimed 4.5, they gave him 5. So now he's an ace. So then there's the guy. Do you remember in the movie Pearl Harbor, what's his name? Black actor, good actor, plays a cook who's a boxer who gets behind a machine gun and opens up on the Japanese. That's from a true story. There really was a guy
that's
who did
based
that.
on a real character.
To him. Yeah, and more power to him. Yeah, he manned a machine gun, and he got a Navy Cross for that. The real guy who did that. But he got a Navy Cross. If you want to think about it, Mike, he was being fired at, and he fired back at the enemy. Now, I've done that myself, fired back at the enemy, and nobody ever gave me a Navy Cross. And it's just the bar is so much lower. Now you're talking about the Oliver Stone movie. That the only people know about the Kennedy assassination pretty much is the Kevin Costner Oliver Stone movie. You know who was the producer behind, the money guy behind that? Arnon Milchan.
Yes.
The Kryton smuggling Israeli agent.
Yes.
Who also was involved in smuggling out the nuclear material back in the 60s, the NUMEC, where they smuggled out plutonium and stole it from the United States. Now, some people, quite rightly, theorize that the Israelis might have been part of that because Kennedy was trying to stop them from becoming nuclear. And here we have a nuclear smuggler, creating the narrative, which has nothing to do with Israel, of course, nothing in the movie about that. That the narrative is created by our pop culture. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention here. That and they're devaluating our contribution. Like I say, 1,000 victories versus 111. You don't even know nobody knows who some of the other groups are. There were aces in a day. Chuck Yeager, ace in a day.
Yes, Chuck Yeager.
Another guy, David McCampbell, a Navy guy, nine in one day. Well, geez, the whole group didn't do that in the Tuskegee Airmen. But there we go. They're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's just, when you take over that narrative, and then you don't, by the way, broadcast and educate people about who's committing all the crime, and say that they're winning the wars and they're not committing all the. Well, they are committing all the crime. They didn't win all the wars and all that. It's just crap. So, anyways, I just wanted to get that off. And what do you think about that, Mike?
Well, you make a valid point here that, it's been very fashionable to focus on the accomplishments of black soldiers and black aviators and black sailors, but it's wrong to do that to the exclusion of soldiers, sailors, and aviators of other races.
Who did far more, by the way.
Yes.
Who did far more. Let's not sugarcoat it. They did far more. So it is what it is, Mike, and that goes through our entire culture, and that's why you only see us denigrated or devalued in some way.
Yes,
that means basically European Americans or other people overvalued compared to their contributions, and some people, whatever they do, they're never criticized at all. Guess who those guys are? It's against the law even to criticize them.
Yes.
That's our popular culture, and that's how things are decided, and that's how people get to know things. Then you add in Wikipedia, which is totally their creation, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, did I say Wikipedia? All that stuff is fixed. Google, all that's owned by you know who. Yeah, and they only show what they want you to see.
Well, they're certainly proving that these days with the political discussion. By the way, we've had somebody just write on in to remind us about the Black Sheep's Squadron. That's Pappy Boyington.
VMF 214. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Pappy Boyington. He shot
I
down
should have
28
remembered that
planes.
one because they were shooting the TV series for that on an old airfield right in back of Magic Mountain. We used to see those planes taking off and coming in all the time.
And you're my age. You remember that show in the 70s. But
Yes.
if you're born after the 70s, you wouldn't know that at all. So, at any rate, they're adjusting history to the way they want it to be.
Yes.
And it's devaluating everything that we're doing, upvaluing everybody else. Anyways, that's it from me, Mike. Thank you, man.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike, what's up?
I was about to ask you that.
Okay. Yeah, a couple of things. You mentioned before about the masks again, about people getting masks are more likely to get the COVID or whatever.
No, I didn't
else,
say that.
virus.
I didn't say that. I said that there was a CDC study that 85% of the people that came down with COVID-19 had been wearing masks.
Okay, yeah, well, okay. That's why I'm talking about, yeah. That reminds me of my friend who's got it now. He was forced to wear his mask 12 hours a day, hot weather, cool weather, whatever else, in that prison there. No air conditioning. And people are coming down there now with the COVID like crazy, both officers and inmates. This goes to show you, these masks are detrimental. They don't protect you from anything. They don't protect anybody else from anything. They stifle your breathing somewhat. They stifle your oxygen intake.
Mm-hmm.
They're dirty. They're filthy. And that brings me to another thing I want to talk to you about. I just got YouTube just stopped my latest video that I made today. They gave me a strike, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And it was about that idiot Newsom, in California.
Yes.
And him saying that you should not only, when you go to a restaurant, wear your mask into the restaurant, but when you eat, you should actually, between bites, you should put your mask back on and take it up. And I ridiculed him. I says, this man is, I called him retarded. I says, the man is stupid, retarded. I said, no, I didn't say, I'm sorry, I didn't say he was actually retarded. I said, he's not that, he can't be that stupid because he wouldn't be governor if he was, because even a retard would know better than something like that. I told him, the same thing with Cuomo when he sent those sick people to the nursing homes, where you have some of the most immune-compromised people possible in these nursing homes. So I think, I use some four-letter words, which I do in most of my YouTube, because sometimes for emphasis, you can emphasize, I think, a lot better. You're showing you really mean business with a few four-letter words mixed in. But so they silenced me, and They refused to post it, saying they're giving me a strike for that. I tried to get it in. I got different ways of trying to get it in anyway, but I wasn't. I'm going to post it to Facebook and see if I can get it through that way, and then ask people to share it to Twitter, since I'm banned from Twitter also. And by the way, I'm not ashamed of that. I'm very proud of it, okay? Because I like to speak my mind, Mike. I don't like these people. I don't like censorship. I love the Constitution. I love the First Amendment. I love the Second Amendment. I love the Fourth Amendment. And all these things are being violated on us today, Mike.
Yes.
I don't believe people have a right, because they own a business, to deprive you of these constitutional rights. I don't go along
I'm in
with
agreement.
That's libertarian BS. That's all that is. I believe you have a right. There's nothing in the Constitution that says a private corporation can deprive you of your constitutional rights. And I think we ought to do something. I know if I was the president, they really would hate me, because these billionaires, I would tax them out of existence. Okay, I would break up these corporations. I use antitrust laws. I'd confiscate a lot of these people's stolen wealth. I'd have a wealth tax on anybody making over, let's say, a few million. Let's say anybody that's worth close to $1 billion. I'd have a very large wealth tax, like maybe 15-20% a year, because I bring them down to size. These are predators. They're using their wealth as a predatory means. Okay, You want to call me a socialist? I'm sure some of the people out there probably will call me a socialist for saying stuff like this. Go ahead, then call me a socialist. I don't care. I want what's right for this country. Okay, and what's not right for this country right now is these ultra-rich billionaires. Most of them are psych patients, or should be psych patients, and they're dominating this country because they're paying everybody off, and they're ruining this country. They've brought this. They're the ones pushing these lockdowns. They're the ones pushing these masks. They're the ones who want to push those vaccines into us. And I think we got to look at them as the enemy. And it's not socialism. It's not real capitalism. It's a predatory form of capitalism, which is the most extreme form. Just like communism is the most extreme form of socialism, these predators that now got their teeth into our country are the most extreme form of capitalism. And I'm telling you, they need to be brought down to size. I don't care
Mark,
what you call that supposed to do.
Mark, I got to let you go. You got to take another break for commercials. More phone calls after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Steve in West Virginia. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Joe kind of stole my thunder, but I'm going to say a couple things. Yeah, people really, really need to be careful going out to those protests, riots, whatever you want to call it, because you could, these Antifa people are wearing goggles, they're wearing helmets, they're wearing all this stuff, and you could be shot with a non-lethal round right in the face. I mean, you could just be walking down the road, not really in the mix, and the police are shooting these rounds, and one could hit you, and they're throwing balloons filled with urine on people. I mean, that can make you sick. They're doing all sorts of weird other things. They're throwing stuff from the tops of buildings. If something, it doesn't even matter if it's small. If somebody's up on a 15-story, 20-story building and they throw something down and they hit you in the top of the head, I mean, you can get seriously hurt. You want to really know where you're at and pay attention to, look up and where you're at. And, I don't recommend it. I'm a pretty big guy, Mike. And, a few years ago, I could bench press almost 400 pounds.
Well, that's impressive.
I wouldn't go to these riots. Yeah. And I wouldn't go to these I wouldn't go. You're just asking for trouble. I mean, I know people want to stand up and stuff, but, these places are crazy. Now they're shooting people with paintball guns. Each side is doing it.
Yeah.
And it's wild. And here's the worst part about it. There's a lot of angry millennial type people there that, if you look at this guy that was a security guard, he was a really small, scrawny guy. He probably weighed about 150, 160 pounds. But they're passive aggressive, Mike, and they may not get confrontational in the beginning.
He wasn't even licensed to be a security guard.
Exactly. And I think he has ties to Pinkerton, and anybody who wants to do some research on Pinkerton is the history of Pinkerton in our country is terrible. But Mike, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I got one other thing, and it's going to be really fast. Jeff Rintz and like Matt Drudge, they call these, they're such news aggregators. You follow me?
Well,
they have, now what they have on Twitter is they have some really good Twitter aggregators. And if you want to watch, I watched that shooting in Colorado. I watched it within probably 20 minutes after it happened. I watched it way faster than you're ever going to be able to hear about it or watch it on Matt Drudge or on any of the mainstream news channels. And I just want to tell you your listeners some sites, some Twitter sites to go to, and you can get this news right away. You can watch anything that happens with the riot because it's being uploaded in a constant fashion to these aggregators. And one of them is called CIA Simulation, CIA underscore simulation underscore warlord. CIA simulation warlord, all underscore between each letter or between each word. The other one is, of course, everybody knows Andy No, but his is a lot more commentary than the actual filming. Then there's Ian Miles Chong, another one that's out there, and I think his Twitter handle is Still Gray, like he's got gray in his hair. And then one of the best ones out there, probably the best one that gets the information on these riots all over the country, is called Kitty Shackelford. Kitty Shackelford. And it's called Kitty's List. And Mike, I'm not kidding you. These people, they're all, for 10, 12 hours a day, that's all they're doing is, getting video from everywhere. You can watch it so fast that Twitter cannot take it down that fast.
Okay.
And it's amazing. It's amazing, Mike. I don't know how the mainstream news is going to stay in business when you start watching this, because these people are scooping the mainstream news.
Well, the corporate media is in decline anyway. They're losing audience, and part of it is the fact of all the lying. They're losing audience to the independent media, and you're right. These Twitter aggregators are getting the news out faster than anybody else can, and it's a heck of a resource. So, and we're going to see the corporate media decry the lack of journalistic filtering, but that's what we want to get away from.
Yeah.
Anyway, Steve, I got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. We're going to be back with more phone calls after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Stuart in Maine. Hello, Stuart. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Okay. How you doing, Mike? Mark from North Carolina has called a number of times, and to me, he illustrates the problem of capitalism leads people to socialism, because, people abuse the profit motive. It becomes all about me, and the drive to just make money and self-satisfaction, and which it can be often abusive and destructive to the nation. And these things have to be looked at on an individual basis, okay? On the other hand, like I say, the individual just can't, you just can't have this abstract freedom that, like I've mentioned before, we want liberty and freedom. Well, what does that mean? That's an abstraction. So, that's why I say you need a strong government, okay,
yes,
to control this. And Donald
Yeah, but
Trump,
there has to be restrictions on the government so that they don't abuse their power.
Of course, you can retain the first 10 amendments, for example, at a minimum. But the thing is that what's going to guide the economy? Is it going to be just personal self-interest, or is it going to be, the national interest? And Trump is moving in that direction very slowly, but it basically, he's saying, we want the factories back here. Now, a nationalist government could say, look, you want to move your factories out of the country? Well, we'll either put tariffs on them, or better yet, since you benefited from our infrastructure, we'll buy you out at market rate, and then the government can auction it off to private interests, okay? Something like that. And, that's why I say if you're going to continue with this nonsense of small government, you're going to end up in the same place you're in now, and you're going to have people telling you, well, you can only make X amount of dollars because you don't need any more. Well, if you're doing good work for the country and building things that are benefiting the country, I don't care if you have $1 billion, okay? So the individual gets protected, but within the framework, of the nation. And, of course, what I'm talking about here is fascism. And
yes.
as a second point, I find that when you occasionally bring it up, I don't see what the difference between oligarchy and fascism is the way you describe it. Now that's the second point. So anyway, your thoughts?
Well, I'm naturally leaning away from fascism. I think capitalism, as it was originally practiced in this country, is a good system, but it has become hideously unbalanced. And we need to remember that government was originally set up to basically serve the purpose, if you will, of a referee or an umpire between the greed of the ultra rich and the collective good of the ordinary people. Unfortunately, our current government has definitely gone over to aligning itself with the money power, and that is a classic definition of fascism.
Well, no, the money power rules for itself. Okay, the money power is controlled by the state. That's the difference, and the proof is in what happened in Germany, and what happened in Italy, and what happened in Portugal under Salazar. And in modern times, you could say the same thing with Gaddafi, and you could say the same thing with Saddam Hussein. They had strong states, but they made them the strongest economically in their region because it was guided by the national interest. You see?
Yeah, I see your point there, especially with both Gaddafi and Hussein.
Yeah, I mean, you have to choose. What's your first principle, the individual or the nation? Okay? And we're not talking about, this idea that if you want private property, you have to choose between capitalism and socialism is wrong, as I'm trying to describe here with the whole concept of fascism. And people, it's not easy to find readings about it. I mean, the British did a lot of good writing on it in the 1930s. But, if people want to get at least some kind of an idea, they could go to Hitler's Mein Kampf and see the German variant of it. I know you're not supposed to say anything about Hitler. Hitler is the origins of all evil. Anyway, that's the point I wanted to make. So, I don't want to take up all your time here.
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for the education and for the phone call. And we're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, how you? Tried to call in 3 times last week. I don't know what happened. You guys don't let me get I don't know what's going on. But anyway, listen, first off, just so everybody knows, your listeners do know, to me it looks like the Republicans are the sons of liberty, and the demonic Democrats are looking like the sons of tyranny. That's how I'm looking at this, Mike. And this is about 1776, the Constitution. The Constitution is the lifeblood of the American patriot. Liberty is her child, and she is your birthright. Defend her with your last breath, for without freedom, democracy shall forever suffocate beneath the dredges of tyranny. Now, I'm going to tell you what's going on here in South Florida, Mike, so all your other listeners were going to call in, and I can't wait till tomorrow's show. We had a big rally here, Trump rally. Actually, I was stuck in it, and it stretched for almost 27 miles, all the way from I-95 on 36th Street, all the way into Little Havana, all the way over to West Flagler, all the way over back into actually the FIU campus, which is out west, Florida International University. The rally was 27 miles long of Trump supporters. There wasn't one helicopter that flew over, not one news station out there except Channel 51, the Spanish station. Not one English group of these news stations would report on it until Channel 51 did a report on it. So Channel 10 here, WPLG, they actually reported on it around 12 o'clock at night. They gave like a minute review of it. This is tyranny, what's going on. And yesterday we had another Trump rally with Donald Trump Jr. at the Tamiami Airport, and George Masvidal, the fighter, Dana White, he was there, and they drew a crowd of like 7,000 at the hangar. Then we had another group down here in South Bond in the Homestead area that grew about 350 bikers and about maybe 200, 300 trucks. Biden had a rally over there at the park over here off Bird, and there was about probably 2,000 Biden supporters there, but none of them had motorcycles, and they were all mainly females. Now, I want to get back to what's really going on, Mike. We'll talk about the NBA Finals, where the Heat and Lakers played. They lost 70% of the viewership in the NBA Final last night. Did you hear about that, Mike?
I heard about that.
70%. Okay, so 70% of the viewers are waking up that it's all rigged. All these sports are probably fixed. They look fixed to me and rigged. Okay,
Well, I think in this case, it was just, people were tired of having, Black Lives Matter blasted at them. That's not why they tune into sports. That's not why they go to the games. Nobody wants to be lectured at about, current social ills. They're there to have fun. And I think the professional sports players forgot that, and they've dug their own graves, financially. The NBA's in trouble. The NFL's in trouble. NBA is already saying next year, well, it's all gone. You're there to play basketball and nothing else.
Well, yeah, Michael, all the sports are, I hope everybody wakes up that these sports are rigged, and I hope they get to you know what? They're going to lose 70% of viewership. They lose 70% of their salary. Okay? Every one of these major league players and football players, baseball players, basketball players. You know what? You're losing that kind of viewership. You shouldn't get paid just for what your viewership is. It's ridiculous getting these guys millions of dollars, these fools. I'd rather watch, like I told you, midgets play basketball. I get more excited. Watching a 5-foot midget, 3-foot midget dunk on a 5-foot basketball. Let's put the hoop up to 11 foot, see how many people watch the NBA, Mike. Put that one more foot up, and I guarantee nobody watch the NBA. Who's kidding who here? Now, look, Mike, I didn't really call about that. That's me rambling on. So I was ready to ramble last week big time with that one caller in there, but I'm not going to mention no names. I'm not going to start nothing because, it is what it is. But, Mike, getting back to what's just going on now today, the heresy, the hypocrisy of that Supreme Court crap with, Amy Coney Barrett. They kept saying, well, and Holly was awesome, okay? But you notice that now one of those senators had the nerve to say, what happened if they were Jewish? What would happen if the Senate was attacking a Jew for being on the Supreme Court? When they only make up 9 million people of the population of the United States, or the Irish Catholics, or the Catholics, whoever the group they are, Hispanic Catholics, whatever, Cuban Catholics, I don't care who they are. The Catholics make up over 110 million. And you can't, and can you imagine if any one of those, did you see Dick Blumenthal, that idiot? Dickhead Blumenthal, Mike?
Yes.
That lying, habitual liar, and he's in Vermont, and he still gets elected in office. This guy's a creature of the swamp, that Blumenthal. And this guy has nerve to get on that Senate floor and act like he's all that schmuck. He should be sent go to Israel. That's where he should be going to do. That moron, talking crap. And Mike, a Catholic senator was ever like Ted Cruz or any of them, would ever attack a Jew for being on the Supreme Court, they would be thrown out of office right now. Am I lying?
Oh, no, the corporate media would rip them to shreds, send them back home in a body bag.
Rip them to shreds, Mike. They would rip them to shreds. And Amy Coney Barrett, because she's Catholic and she's an ultra-Orthodox Catholic and all this. I mean, this is unbelievable. And then look, Mike, look what's going on in New York with de Blasio and that Como, Como with the Orthodox Jews going crazy in the Catholic Church in New York. You're not hearing about that on the mainstream media. And I'll tell you another thing, Mike, this guy, Mad Sludge, the homosexual drudge that lives here in South Florida, I guess he sold the Drudge Report, but he's living high in the hog, corn cob, whatever he's doing. But I can tell you this, his station is telling you the truth, what's going on. When it comes to being attacking those Jews in New York, he lets loose on the Drudge Report, Mike. Have you noticed that? Well,
I don't tend to read the Drudge Report on a regular basis.
Well, I glance at it once in a while, Mike, because I have to look at it because it's like I'm getting a little insight of how see this guy Drudge, he basically turned on Trump, and in 2016 he was kind of for Trump, and now he's just bombarding him. But now I noticed, Mike, in the last 3 days since the Orthodox Jews are starting to get attacked in New York by the governor, that Drudge is like, he's backing down a little bit. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like I said, Mike, the Republicans to me are the sons of liberty, and the demonic party is the sons of tyranny. I don't care what anybody says. And you know what? Look at some of your callers, Mike. They're calling from these blue states, knowing their state is never going to go red. But they sure would like to turn them purple or blue. But the blue states are already blue, Mike. You tell me. I want one of your callers today, tomorrow, whatever. Tell me if their state has an opportunity to turn back to red, the conservative principles. I want to know. Does Jersey have a chance to turn back? Does Virginia? Does New York have a chance? California have a chance to go back to red when they used to be red?
Yes.
You think it's ever possible, Mike?
Well, anything is really possible here. My concern is that, California is turning blue and, Texas could turn blue, and that would be bad news.
Yeah, well, Mike, I got to say one more thing. I know you got probably another call. Listen, Donald Trump finally today, Mike, it was the first day here in Florida. Now, he's winning Florida by 2 points right now, according to some latest polls. And Ron DeSantis was on yesterday. He's a great governor. We got a great governor here. I can tell you this. Donald Trump today, Mike, the first time he's done this all election is he's starting to run the wall ad about the illegal immigration, about here how they're going to get free health care over American citizenry. And, they, all these demon rats are talking about the Affordable Care Act. Hey, how many people, men and women, have died from the angel mothers and fathers had an illegal alien kill one of their loved ones? Okay? And then, you had a couple cars, say one guy can bench press 400 pounds. That's all great and dandy. I know guys can bench 400 pounds too, but you know what? You got to learn how to fight. You got to learn a new kung fu. You know how to attack. You got to go on the attack. You got to look at some of these Navy SEAL training.
Or you got to learn how to run.
They are bad, and you got to know how to run. He who fights and runs away may live to see another day. You've heard that before.
Oh, yes, I have.
Here in South Florida, when we had this rally here, like I said, I felt so safe when I was driving through Little Havana because I see all these, I feel safe. And you know what, Mike? There was not one arrest with 30,000 cars. There was not one arrest here in the Florida area, in the Miami area, and in the Little Havana rally. 30,000 cars, Mike. Check it out. You don't see it. You might see it on one of these reports locally, but there was, like I told you, Donald Trump Jr. was at the Miami airport yesterday at the hangar, and he had George Masvidal, that Cuban MMA fighter, and there was a couple of other MMA. I think Corey Covington was going to show up, but I don't know if he can make it. But you know what? That's what we need. We need to fight, but your callers are right. You got to learn to train. You got to learn to attack. You got to learn to go for the vitals, and you got to know how to go for it. But you know what? Yeah. We know the gun is the ultimate arbitrator when it comes to violence. It surely is. And that's why, hey, like I always tell on your show, Mike, what have I been saying for years? What have I been saying? You have, with a gun, you're a citizen. Without the gun, you'll become the subject. And that was John Adams in his first inaugural address after Washington stepped down. With the gun, you will be the citizen. Without a gun, you will become the subject. And that's what they're trying to do here. And that's why, Mike, these Cubans and Venezuelans, they're not going to allow that to happen here. They've already went through that Cuba and Venezuela, Nicaragua. They don't want to hear. They love their freedom here, man. You can go to the grocery store and they've never seen all this food and cars. They've never had none of this, Mike. They're lucky if they get one chicken a week to eat, man. The only thing they were used to was beans and rice. Maybe a little fish once in a while. And half the population don't even get that because the people in the rural areas don't have a chance. It's already right by the time it gets in there. I've been there. I've done that. And I can tell you, Mike, the people here have a lot of patriotism where I'm at right now. And I see, Mike, for every Biden flag I'll see about 50 Trump flags. That ain't no lie. That's the truth. The whole thing about the truth. Oh my God. But you know what, Mike? They're going to steal this election through the ballot. I think Ron DeSantis was on the Englishman's show. I can't think of the guy, the bald-headed guy. He was on, he was on Mark Levin's show. He was on Levin, Ron DeSantis yesterday, and he's even saying they're going to try to steal us through the mail-in ballot, Mike.
Yes, they are.
Never allowed that to happen. And the military, when the military goes to vote, they should vote on base. They don't have to say, they used to, back in the day, until Clinton screwed that up, you could vote right on the base, like the military servicemen. You were able to vote right on the base and take the ballots to the box and take it to the poll and have them counted. Now you got to mail it in. I don't trust none of these crooks. None of them. They're all criminal, Mike.
Yep.
The military's got to be put back the way it was. When you vote on the base, that's how your vote's going to count.
Well, looking at all the vote fraud back in 2016, Trump had to know it was going to be at least twice as bad this time, and he really failed to take what I would consider to be adequate action to clean up our election system. And if this election is stolen from him, I'm afraid the blame rests right on President Trump because he had the opportunity to fix it, and he dropped the ball.
Well, I agree with you, Mike. And it's not just Pence. Trump. It's Pence and all the Republican Party. It's not just Donald Trump. It's all of them. That whole Republican Party should have saw this coming. The senators, the congressmen. Look at Pelosi and the nonsense she gets away with. What she's telling everybody to wear a mask and she's going to a beauty salon without a mask. You know what? The hypocrisy of these criminals, these demon rats.
Tom?
Anyway, thank you for taking my call.
I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. Going to try and jam in some more phone calls before the end of the show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. We're going to try and jam through a bunch of phone calls, starting with Dustin in New Jersey. Hello, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, there was a couple things I was going to talk about, but Mike, did you hear Rudy Giuliani and Martha McCallum on Fox News?
I remember seeing them, but I wasn't listening at the time. What did they say?
Well, I'm just saying he like sounded like, he sounded kind of like in bad shape, like that rough voice and coughing.
Well,
he's probably sick, So I don't know what he's got, but what they got in around the White House. So I just want that Florida caller who called in, not Tom, like Mike, don't listen to these people. Wear your mask. Everybody wear your mask, and just use your brain, man. Come on now.
yeah, but you've got that CDC study that said that 85% of the people wearing the mask still got the COVID.
They're wearing bandanas. That's not a mask. Is that bandana's not a mask? Surgical mask is the minimum. N95s if you can find them.
Yes.
But Mike, you saw what's going on in Britain. They got the 3-tier system that they're starting.
Yes.
Because
yeah.
The hospitalizations are going up there, Mike. And it's always. And I just real quick before I get from Brazil, they're at 150,000 dead, and that's not counting the people, the indigenous people. Like the poor people that died at home and they just buried them. So I just want you to keep that in mind, Mike. Mike, I'll call in tomorrow. Have a good show. Put somebody else on.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mitchell in Memphis. Hello, Mitchell. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Mike, I don't have time. Anyway, nobody can beat my butt. You can't catch me. There's the humor bit for the show. Hey, Mike, listen real quick. I was talking about the crisis of vague language last week. We touched on the Fifth Amendment. We touched on the Eighth Amendment. But now I want to go to something. David Knight interviewing Richard Proctor. He'd been referenced on your show. The show was 10/9/20 at the end of David Knight's show. Richard Proctor is... let me see here. He's heavily involved in the Constitution Party in Utah. He's written a book called Saving the Constitution. He's written a book called A Constitution If You Can Keep It. Now, he was touching on the 20th Amendment, and he was looking at Section 3. And I'm going to read to you exactly what he said real quick. He said, the real threat is the 20th Amendment. When you get down to Section 3, and the Congress by law provide for the case wherein neither a president-elect nor a vice president-elect shall have qualified. And then he said, what does qualified mean? It isn't defined. He's more like vague language. Then he says, declaring who shall then act as a president or the manner in which the one who is elected shall act. Then Richard Proctor said, just a minute, you guys. That says for any reason they can figure that the president hasn't qualified at noon on the 20th, they will determine who's going to be the president in a manner that they so choose. And he said, look at the open-mindedness here. That it says in the manner in which they so choose, and then it goes on to say, and then we'll appoint the real president in the manner that's qualified, and that will be a manner that they choose. This is a coup, and this is the biggest one out there, and nobody knows it. And then David Knight says, Nancy Pelosi gets to pick who will be the president. And he laughs and says, I wonder who she'll pick. So,
yes.
So at any rate, and there's another thing that Richard Proctor talked about. He said there's another aspect. The states have to certify their elections, and there's no limit in the Constitution of how long it's going to take them to certify. So it looks like there is some problem with this vague language. This Amendment 20 came in, in 1933. So, but the problem I have, Mike, is when you try to address some of these problems of the Constitution, everybody gets mad at you.
Yeah, they do. And Mitchell, I'm sorry, but there's the music. Our show is over, and I'm going to have to let you go. My apologies to those who did not get on the air today. Please call back tomorrow. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We cannot continue without your support. Thanks to everybody who already has donated. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.